We are all on a journey. We build dreams and create expectations. When the road we're traveling isn't straight and smooth, we encounter unexpected detours.
Road closure ahead.
That delay us from moving forward. This is where dreams die and passions fade.
Obstacle in road ahead.
We can feel lost.
Turn around when possible.
But there's an alternate route. We can learn about navigating our expectations with a God who knows the way forward.
Redirecting route.
So remember, we've been talking about expectations, and we thought it was such a great idea because the beginning of fall is a time of new beginnings, and we're all filled with new expectations. And we've been looking at expectations, and over the past 4 weeks have tried to make it clear that our expectations have a way of shaping the way we see things. They affect our perceptions, but even more, our relationships, and in particular, our relationship with God. So 2 weeks ago, the homily really tried to get across the point about God's expectations for us. And we tried to paint a picture where we invited all of us to look at how God has not only a vision for all of us as a parish community, but has a dream for each and every one of us. And depending on what we do with those expectations determines if that dream and vision takes flesh. And just last week, if you were here, we looked at our expectations on God. We have some, maybe even many expectations of God. And when our expectations are going well, it's great. But when they don't go so well, our relationship with God, maybe we struggle with it. So it's my task tonight to wrap up this series. And in order to do it, I'd like to share with you a key virtue that I believe has to do with how well either we manage our expectations or how our expectations manage us. This key virtue is a powerful one, but I'm going to keep you in suspense and not tell you what it is, because as we look at the story of Naaman, I think this key virtue is going to become very self-evident to you. The story of Naaman in the first reading, we didn't get the whole story, but it perfectly illustrates how we need to manage our expectations and adjust them so that this key virtue makes it possible. So let's look at Naaman. He was a very well-respected military commander, highly esteemed, wealthy, and powerful. But he had one difficulty. He had a disease, leprosy. And you might think that that disease would have brought him to his knees, but it didn't. His wealth, his stature really got in the way almost so that he didn't get healed. So Naaman's story is really our story, and let's unpack it a little bit. You see, Naaman was told that he had to go to Elisha, the prophet, and Elisha would cure him of his leprosy. Well, being so important, Naaman arrives at the house of Elisha, but Elisha doesn't even come out of the house. What a blow to his ego. And further, he simply sends word that Naaman should go to the Jordan and plunge himself in 7 times. Well, for Naaman, that wasn't magnificent enough. And in fact, he got so angry that he wasn't even going to go to the Jordan. His pride got in the way. He had in mind a kind of healing worthy of his stature, maybe a grand gesture, a magnificent miracle. Thankfully, he reluctantly accepted the humble advice of Elisha. Reluctantly, he did it. And he went and he plunged himself into the muddy river. Humility. Did you get the key virtue? This key virtue is at the heart of how we manage our expectations. You see, Naaman's pride told him he was too important for the simple act of washing. But God's ways were different than what he expected. He wanted something impressive, but God's way was different. It was humble, so ordinary, and so accessible. And because Naaman refused to let go of his expectations, he almost missed the opportunity for the healing. The core message of this whole message series, in one sentence: God's ways are not our ways. Our faith journey teaches us to adjust our expectations to fit God's ways. Sometimes God works in ways that seem small or simple, but are just as powerful with his plan. 3 takeaways from the series. Just as Naaman's healing came about because he let go of his pride and his expectations, we have to learn to surrender our rigid ideas of how God should work. And when we do that, we create a space where God's power can work. Number 2, there's always the need to remain hopeful. Hopeful that even when our circumstances look bleak or our expectations aren't met, God's way, God's plan is still at work. You know, recently, just this week, someone shared this quote. It has to do with how God uses grammar and how it's different than the way we do. When we come to an end of a sentence, we put a period. We think it's done. God writes with commas. And there's always the room for God to make things different. The third takeaway, we have to trust that God's ways are good, even when they look different than what we desire or want. So what do? Let go of specific expectations that limit how God can work. Be willing to be humble, to recognize that God's power, God's ways are not our ways. I told you, Naaman's story is our story. We have so much going for us, like Naaman. But if we're honest, there's that one dis-ease that really needs to bring us to our knees. But yet, at least speaking for myself, it's difficult to be humbled, to let pride not keep us from going to our knees. Let's recognize that God's vision for us is so powerful, a dream waiting to happen. Let's create that space with a humble heart where God can be simple and ordinary and most of all, accessible.